Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Megan, and I know that it has been a minute since I have been on here, but I am so excited to start filming again, making videos for you again, and I have a few updates to share with you all. So I'm gonna have some coffee because it has been a long day of me just working. But anyways, so to update you guys, I just want to let you guys know that my booking is available now. If you guys want to check it out, it's going to be on my website. I will have it somewhere in this video. But booking is available for any type of coaching or mentoring that you guys are looking into. I will be available from June until August when school starts, pretty much full time. And then when school starts, I'll see how many clients I get and I'll just work it out from there. Other than that, that is pretty much it. Also, I'll be changing my uploading schedule and how many videos I will be uploading a week. But I'm back and I'm excited to be back. So let's get into today's video. All right, so today's topic is going to be on grief. And I know I've done a few videos about, romantic relationships, losing those types of relationships and, trying to get through that. Now, this video is not to tell you what you should do, what you shouldn't do, because everybody goes through grief differently. Now, if you've gone through it or if you're going through it, this video is more so to just share my experience. Also, if you need to relate to anything and know that we're human, there's no right or wrong way to grieve, and that it doesn't make you any less of a human. It doesn't make you a horrible person with however you're choosing to cope with grief. But I'm going to share my experiences, and some parts of it are things that I have heard from other people who have lost people. So these are just the things that I went through, things that I've heard other people that have gone through it, and things that just happen throughout the grief process. So let's get started. So for me and what I had gone through, I lost my dad. A lot of people know him as my papa. He is actually biologically my grandfather, but I was adopted by my grandparents. If you guys haven't checked that video out, then there is a video on my adoption, what had happened, and how that affected my life. I lost my dad, and it's funny because we honestly in my family thought that he was going to be around forever. His mother lived till her late 90s, and I just always thought that he was going to always be around, and I think that's the lesson where, everybody always says, don't take things for granted, never take things for granted, because you never know when you're going to lose that person or that thing. And I learned that lesson throughout that. But what had happened was that it was just a normal night, and it was after dinner time, and everybody was getting ready to go to bed. This is when I was still with the father of my son. He was still living here, and that night I remember my grandmother telling me that Papa had fell. Which is weird because he's not the kind of person to be clumsy or to fall or whatever. So I was just like, okay, he couldn't get off the ground. So when I went to go check on him, he was trying to crawl back to his room, and that wasn't like him. So I had actually had my son's father at the time, I had him go and pick him up off the ground and put him on the bed. The good thing about the whole situation was that the father of my son, he had two grandparents who had had strokes. So the first thing that he had told me was that I think Papa had a stroke. So when I went to go look at him, you could tell one side of his body just wasn't working. He couldn't even lift up one of his arms. He kept trying to pick it up with the other arm, and it just, anyways. And he kept telling me, no need to call the ambulance. He's very, very stubborn. But I looked at him and I said, there's no way I'm waiting on this, because I know how fast a stroke can affect a person. So I called the ambulance. The ambulance had me do certain tests on him or have him do certain things to confirm that it was a stroke. And while she was having me do it, the ambulance was on their way. In my head, when my grandfather had been taken, I had thought, okay, we caught it early. You know, he had just fell. The father of my son just picked him up, recognized it was a stroke, and I recognized it was a stroke, and I called the ambulance, and we caught it early. We're good. So I honestly wasn't that scared. But, oh gosh, I hope I don't cry during this video. But when we got to the hospital and they allowed, my auntie had actually caught the ambulance with my grandfather because she's an EMT and, you know, she has more experience in that field. So when we had got to the hospital and they allowed us, or to the ER, and they allowed us in the back, they had just brought him down from getting a scan. I don't know what kind of scan it was. I don't really remember at all. And all I remember, like, he couldn't really talk. And all I remember him doing, they had to put him under. They had to put him to sleep. So while they were doing that, all I remember him doing was going like this to me. He just kept going like this. He kept looking at me and going like this. Little did I know at that time that that was going to be the last time that I saw my grandfather open his eyes. So they put him under and he was like knocked out snoring. From then on, it was just inoperable. They had to just watch the bleed. Because of where he bled and because he was on blood thinners, it was just, they could not operate on him. So it was just a waiting game, you know. Now I'm going to talk about the parts where, you know, the regret started to hit me. And I think everybody experiences regret when it comes to losing anybody. Literally the time my grandfather got admitted into that hospital, I lived there. I stayed with him. I think the only time I couldn't was when he was in the ICU. You cannot stay overnight in the ICU. But when they had moved him into a regular room, I stayed there. I stayed there every single night. And it's so funny. It's so funny because before all of this had happened, I was actually reading a book. And it's called Fear by Thich Nhat Hanh. And the book speaks about how we're all scared to die one day. You know, we all have this fear of passing away. And we shouldn't have that fear, you know, and even when people are in that position, us being the family or the people who are involved with that person, we should give them comfort, not come from a place of being scared, you know. So to be that person for him, that was my ultimate goal. It's just so weird that I was reading that book at that time and that this whole thing had happened. But anyways, so going back to regret, you know, I regretted a lot of things. I slept there every single night. I literally would only come home to take a bath, and then I'd be back in the hospital. And the nurses would tell me, you know, you need to get rest, you need to eat, you need to go home and sleep. The times when I would come home just for like a nap or whatever, because, you know, I mean, sleeping in the hospital chair was very uncomfortable. But the times where I was at home, oh my God, you're gonna go through times where you are begging God. You are begging God to be that miracle. You know, we all want to be that family that has that miracle. And I mean, I would go to sleep, wake up, and just cry. I wouldn't even be able to eat. I couldn't eat. I would be crying on the floor, just begging God to please, please, please save my grandfather. I will do anything. And I think a lot of us go through that. We go through the begging phase of, I will do anything to have this person back. Now, while he was on life support, I forget how long he had been on it, the decision came up to my grandmother where, it's either we leave him on here or we take him off. And I think when families are put in this position, and I've told this to even my friends who have been put in these positions, when it comes to somebody being on life support, you have to put your feelings aside. That's the hardest thing to do, but you have to put your feelings aside. It's not about you. It's about the person that's on life support. So it came down to the decision of what he had wanted. He did not want to be on life support past a certain time. So the decision was already made. We had to respect that. And knowing who my grandfather was, he would never want to live like that. And, when you're going through something like this, I would talk to the surgeon, I would talk to the doctor, you talk to these people and you're like, is there any chance that he is gonna wake up? And I had the doctor tell me, if he wakes up, he will never be the same person again. He'll never be able to walk. He'll never be able to talk. And he'll never eat like a normal person. And so that's when I had to, in my head, a part of me was telling myself, I don't care. I don't care. I will take care of him the rest of my life if I have to. And then there was the other part that I had to separate that and say, is this the life he would want to live? And the answer was no. He would never forgive me or my grandmother or anybody in our family if he had to live his life like a vegetable. He would never, ever forgive us. And so that's when you have to put everything aside and say it's not about you, it's about them. It's about their well-being. It has nothing to do with you. So that is pretty much summed up what had happened. The feelings of regret, the feelings of, they call it bargaining, I feel. When you're gonna just bargain and say, I'll do this, I'll do that, as long as I have this person. A lot of times you just have to put your needs and your wants aside because it has nothing to do with you. And it's how that person has to live. It's their quality of life that really, really matters in the end. After taking my grandfather off life support, and even after his funeral, I think a lot of people feel this stagnation or feeling disconnected. That's the biggest thing, is that I felt so disconnected from my feelings, and the only way that I can describe it was me literally living my life on autopilot. I'd say for at least a year. A straight year after he had passed, a straight year after his funeral. It was just me living my life on autopilot. I couldn't feel anything. I had no feelings. Like, saying that I was disconnected is exactly what it was. I was just disconnected from everything and everybody around me. I had no feeling at all. You could try and hurt me. You can try and make me upset. You could say whatever you wanted to say to me and it wouldn't have mattered because I just didn't feel anything. I was just going through the motions. That's exactly what it was. And I think a lot of people experience this when they go through grief. It's just, you're just literally going through the motions. And I think a lot of us, when we look back on it, we feel bad about it. We feel guilty that we were living our lives like that. But that's all a part of grief. And it's okay to have to go through those feelings. It's okay to have to, experience that, because that's what's going to happen. You're not going to know what to feel. You're not going to know what to think. And you're not going to know what life is after losing somebody. I think a lot of us tell ourselves, I just want to feel normal again. That is one thing that, I kept trying to tell myself after losing my grandfather was, I just want to feel normal again. I don't feel normal. I don't feel like myself. But the truth is, and what I tell everybody that loses somebody is that you're never going to be that person that you were before you lost that person. You're never the same person. When they tell you that you lose a part of yourself when you lose somebody, it is 100% true. You literally lose a part of yourself the day you lose somebody like that. The day you lose a parent, the day you lose a significant other, the day you lose a child, you lose a part of yourself that you cannot ever get back. So to try to say that you want to be who you once were, I hate to break it to you, but you will never be that person again. And it's not a bad thing. It is not a bad thing. It's just all the process of losing somebody and going through grief. There are also, fluctuations of grief, the ups and the downs. You are gonna go through, literally, it's like waves. You're okay, the day's going all right, and then like that, you can just be down in the dumps. I would drive to work in the mornings and I'm like, oh, I'm fine. Every day that whole year driving to work, I cried my eyes out. Every day driving home, I cried my eyes out. It was like I was fine throughout the day. Once I hopped in that car, everything would just come out. You're gonna go through times of being confused. You're gonna go through times of being okay, being happy some days, I think a lot of us do feel guilty of, experiencing happiness after grief, and there's nothing to feel guilty about. I would say that our loved ones want us to be happy. Our loved ones want us to be okay. That is the one thing they want for us after they pass on. To go through grieving and healing, I think you need to just find a new normal that works for you. You have to also accept that things will never be the same. They're never gonna be the same. And it's okay. It's okay to not have your life be the way that it once was. So to go through all of these things, I would just say, take your time. Don't ever feel guilty for, having disconnected feelings, for not being who you used to be. Do not ever have feelings of guilt. It is just all the process of grieving somebody. I think something that needs to be reminded to anybody who's going through grief or anybody who has gone through grief is that your bond is forever. Your bond with the person who has passed on is eternal. You need to always remember this. And I know it's hard to understand or grasp when you're going through loss. But let me tell you that when your loved ones pass on, they will show you signs. They will give you, reassurance that they are always with you. I actually bought 2 books when I was going through grief. One was Tyler Henry's book, and another was Teresa Caputo's book, or Caputo. I don't know how to pronounce it, but those books helped me very much understand the other side. So if you're going through grief, I 100% recommend buying those books. They help me understand, the other side, the spirit side to it, how our loved ones think. And a lot of it is, your bond is forever. Now, I don't know about certain people, but when you're going through grief, the first thing that we want is for our loved ones to show us a sign. Give us some type of reassurance that they're with us. But what I've learned from these books and from going through it is that a lot of times when we're going through grief, especially being disconnected from our feelings or, just experiencing it overall, is that because we're so disconnected, even if our loved one showed us a sign, we wouldn't even know it's there. And so when you get closer to healing, that is when you start recognizing the signs, the messages that your loved ones are trying to show you. And I'm going to give you a perfect example of this. So when my grandfather had passed, anybody who knows him knows that he was never touchy-feely kind of, give me hugs, give me a kiss. He was never that kind of guy. He showed his love in other ways. It just wasn't through, affection. which is fine. You know, we all knew this about him. And my biggest regret was that, you know, because he wasn't the kind of guy to say, oh, I love you, or the kind of guy who would get, you know, take a hug or whatever, you know, I always told myself, okay, you know, the one time that we're going to get this chance is when I get married, you know, when we have our father and daughter dance. You know, Papa isn't really an affectionate kind of person, so I'll save it for that day. Another regret that I had, so when he had passed, I had told myself, or I would tell him all the time, you know, Papa, what I wouldn't give to just have another hug or kiss from you. You know, that's all I want, is just a hug and kiss. I would say for a good 6 to 8 months, I had no dreams of him. No signs, nothing. The only sign that I would get was a dragonfly, which I had somebody who actually, a medium actually tell me, it was a medium psychic, actually tell me that, you know, he's going to show himself through the dragonfly. So those are the first signs, was the dragonfly. And it would happen at weird times. I'm not even kidding. When we sold his van that morning, there were like 2 or 3 dragonflies around the area. Anytime I would go driving, dragonfly. And in my area, by my house, I have never, ever seen a dragonfly. On his anniversary, on my grandmother's birthday, you know, just dragonflies. Any special occasion, I don't see them now, only on a special occasion, which is very, very weird. So any special occasion, I will always see a dragonfly. On his birthday, on my grandmother's birthday, on my birthday, I always see a dragonfly in front of my house. And it doesn't go like flying all over the place. It will literally fly either around me or around my car. So that's the first sign that I ever got. The second sign that I had got from my grandfather was on my way home from work. I was so exhausted to the point where I was literally listening to nothing on the radio. It was a staticky channel, literally just like static playing. And I was so exhausted that I was falling asleep while I was driving. And I think like I had fell asleep. All I remember hearing was Kanani, which is my Hawaiian name if you guys don't know, but Kanani, and it wasn't in anybody else's voice but my grandfather's voice. And I was like, what the heck? Like, it came through the radio. And it was the creepiest thing, but at least I know he had my back. But as for the hug and the kiss, once I had actually gone through grief, it was one night. I wouldn't say I was completely healed, but I was more so on the healing side than, you know, grieving. And I had this dream. It was the most vivid dream to the point where I woke up crying because it felt so real. And it was him. And he walked over to me and he gave me a hug and a kiss, and he whispered in my ear, I love you. And that is just, you cannot confirm that any more than what that was. That, you know, our loved ones are always, always with us, and they will always answer us when the time is right. So if you're going through grief, or if you've gone through it, I'm pretty sure you have had, you know, signs or reassurance when it comes to certain things. But if you are going through grief and you haven't had that yet, trust me when I say that your loved ones are listening to you. They are always, always with you. And you have to just literally pay attention to what is going on around you, because they show up at the most random times. They show up sometimes at the most perfect times, but they are always, always with you. But I think that one of the most important things is to take your time. There is no need to rush through healing when it comes to grief. And I think a lot of people would say, oh, I'm going to try and get through this so I can get back to who I was. But healing faster doesn't mean that you're healing any better, if that makes any sense. And nobody in your life should ever tell you or give you a timeline on when you should get over grieving somebody. I think with this also is that you never really get over losing somebody. You're never going to get over it. You're just going to learn to live with it. And what I mean by this is I have days where I can think of my grandfather and I can cry and I feel it the same way I felt it all of those years ago, 3 years ago or 4 years ago or whatever it is. It still feels the same. But I've learned to live with it. I've learned to get through life with it and find my new normal. So to have somebody tell you, oh, you should just get over it, you should be over it by now, they have no right. Nobody has any right, and you shouldn't even be telling yourself that. Heal, take your time, because I would honestly say it's probably the hardest thing that you can go through is grief. And the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to taking your time and healing is to embrace life again. And when you discover that for yourself, when you get to the point where you need to, take on that part of healing to embrace your life again, I would say that the biggest realization for me was that when I was going through this autopilot, being disconnected from my feeling stage, the world kept going. The world kept moving on. And with anything in life, when you're grieving anything in life, that is the biggest realization, is that life goes on. Whether you're going through grief, whether you're just going through the motions, life always goes on. So you need to heal and make the choice for yourself when you're ready to embrace life again. Have to come to a place after so long, or you will come to a place after so long that you can't let grief take over your whole life. You can't let grief hold you back, because your loved ones and the people that have passed on, they don't want that for you. It even explains it in Tyler Henry's book, in Teresa's book. It explains that that is the last thing that spirit wants for us, is for us to have losing that person, going through this grief, hold us back from life. They want us to embrace life again. They want us to live life again. They want to see us happy. And the biggest blessing that comes with grief, and I know a lot of us are like, what? There's a blessing that comes with grief? There is. The biggest blessing that comes with grief is that it transforms us. It transforms who we are. It transforms what we value in life. It also gives us a different perspective on the world. We look at the world in a totally different way than we did before we lost somebody. And that is a blessing. I was able to appreciate my grandmother more. It's sad that it took that to happen, but I never knew how much I really loved my grandfather until I lost him. They talk about unconditional, deep love when it comes to a romantic partner. Trust me when I say, when you lose a parent, that is unconditional love. I've never felt so much pain in my heart than I did the day I lost my grandfather. And, I value so much more now. I look at the world differently now, and it's a blessing. It's a blessing that it transformed me, not into a person I don't want to be. It transformed me into a better person today. So with that, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. There will be more videos up this week, but I'm so happy to have shared this part of my life with you guys. A lot of my videos are personal to me, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. I'm so happy to be back. If you guys have any ideas, any recommendations for content that you guys want to see, please check out my Instagram. I will have it somewhere in this clip, and I will see you guys soon.